I woke to the smell of coffee wafting through the kitchen. It was a ritual that had accompanied me every day since my husband's death. The same old cup, with a small crack on the rim, still reminded me of his care and never letting it break. I felt that somehow that coffee was my connection to the past, to everything I had experienced. As I waited for the water to boil, I gazed at the orchids on the balcony. My flowers were my constant companion. Each one seemed to speak to me silently, reminding me that there was still beauty in the world, even when loneliness insisted on surrounding me. The light morning wind ruffled the petals, and for a moment, peace seemed possible. Amanda, my daughter, used to visit me on Sundays. I'd bake a simple cake, and we'd have coffee together. Or at least that's how it was supposed to be. Lately, her visits were brief, filled with cold words and hurried glances. I sensed something had changed, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. My son-in-law, Ricardo, never really liked me. He hid it with polite smiles, but his eyes betrayed impatience. It was as if my presence were a nuisance, a burden he carried only out of obligation. When he was with Amanda, the air grew heavy, and I felt like a stranger in my own home. "You shouldn't live alone, Mom," Amanda once said, scrolling through her phone and barely looking at me. "It's getting hard to take care of you." I laughed, trying to ease the tension, but inside I felt the blow. I'd always taken care of myself, always been independent. Why was she suddenly talking like that? That morning, as I watered the orchids, I remembered my husband. He used to say I was stronger than I realized. But was I still? The weight of the years was beginning to show in my trembling hands, but inside me there was a flame that refused to be extinguished. Amanda returned that day without warning. She walked into the house with Ricardo, both of them serious, almost cold. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, and I felt a shiver run through me. There was something in her voice, something that made me grip the cup tighter. I knew this wouldn't be an ordinary conversation. She talked about doctors, tests, and how I needed to take better care of myself. Ricardo agreed with every word, as if it were a memorized essay. I tried to intervene, but it was as if my voice carried no weight. They looked at me as if I had already decided everything. I remained silent, trying to understand. The love I'd always felt for Amanda seemed to be lost in her eyes. I wanted to believe she was concerned, but there was a harshness in her tone, as if I were just a problem to be solved. At that moment, a strange feeling washed over me. It was as if the ground had slowly begun to give way beneath my feet. And even without proof, my heart already knew. That conversation would change my life forever. Before I continue, I want to ask something very important. If this story has touched you so far, subscribe to the channel now and leave a like. This helps us bring you more stories of betrayal, revenge, emotion, and liberation. And don't forget, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing how far our stories go. The next morning, Amanda asked me to accompany her to a doctor's appointment. She said it was just a routine checkup, that she wanted to make sure I was okay. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. After all, she was my daughter, and I wanted to believe there was affection in her concern. We got into the car, and Ricardo was at the wheel. The silence during the drive was heavy, almost suffocating. I stared out the window, trying to guess where we were going. It wasn't the doctor's office I knew that much. A chill settled in my stomach, but I remained silent. When we arrived, I immediately realized something was wrong. This wasn't a regular hospital, but a clinic surrounded by high walls and heavy gates. My heart raced. "Amanda, what are we doing here?" I asked, trying to remain calm. She looked away and simply said, "It's for your own good, Mom." Two men in lab coats approached. They said my name, smiled artificially, and asked me to come in. Before I could react, they grabbed my arms firmly. I looked at Amanda desperately, hoping she would defend me, but she just crossed her arms and remained motionless. "No, this is a mistake," I screamed, trying to free myself, but my words echoed in vain. Ricardo handed some papers to the receptionist, who stamped them without hesitation. It was as if everything had already been planned, as if I were just a piece to be fitted into a game I didn't understand. I was led through narrow corridors filled with identical doors. The strong smell of disinfectant stung my nose, and the white walls made me feel like I was in a prison. With each step, fear grew within me. I didn't know if I would ever get out. Amanda appeared at my side, feigning affection. "It'll be quick, Mom. You need to rest." But her eyes held no affection, only determination. It was as if I wasn't her mother anymore, just an obstacle that needed to be eliminated. They signed reports saying I was unfit to care for myself. I wanted to tear up those papers, scream to everyone that it was a lie, but my voice seemed powerless. Every doctor who looked at me seemed to have already decided who I was, a frail, worthless old woman. Deep in my chest, a wound began to bleed. It wasn't just the fear of the clinic, but the pain of betrayal. My own daughter had sold me out. The blood that carried my blood had chosen the enemy's side. And as the living room door closed behind me, I realized clearly what had happened. I wasn't there by mistake. I was there because Amanda and Ricardo wanted me out of the picture. The first few days at the clinic were torment. The room was small, with bare walls and a barred window that let in only a sliver of light. At night, the sound of doors locking echoed through the hallways, and I wondered how I had gotten there. It was as if my life had been ripped from me in one fell swoop. The nurses passed quickly, barely looking at my face. Their voices were automatic, devoid of warmth. I tried to explain that I was there against my will, but they just smiled distantly, as if they'd heard it many times before. It was as if my truth didn't matter. I met other patients. Some stared into space, others murmured incomprehensible words. There were stories of abandonment in every lost gaze. I realized that many were there not because of illness, but because they had become a nuisance to their families. This discovery tore me apart. I wasn't the only one betrayed by blood. During visits, Amanda didn't show up. Just a brief phone call from Ricardo to the administration saying I needed long-term care. My heart sank deeper and deeper. I wondered how someone I loved so much could bury me alive in a place like that. One afternoon, as I walked through the inner courtyard, I noticed a man watching me discreetly. He seemed out of place. He wore simple clothes, but had a firm gaze, unlike the others. As he approached, he spoke softly, almost whispering, "Dona Blanca, I know who you are." Startled, I took a step back. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to sound firm, though my hands were shaking. He smiled slightly and replied, "My name is Gabriel. Your husband helped me years ago. He believed in me when no one else did. I owe him a lot." His words hit me like a warm gust of wind in the cold. My husband? How could this stranger be connected to the man I'd lost so many years before? I wanted to believe, but fear of manipulation made me hesitate. Gabriel continued, "I know what your daughter is doing. They want to declare you incompetent to take everything that's yours. But I won't let that happen." His eyes conveyed sincerity, but my mind still clung to doubt. That night, lying on the hard bed in the clinic, I hung on his every word. Part of me wanted to believe someone was finally there for me. Another part feared it was just another scam, another trap to break me. But deep down, something inside me was rekindled. For the first time since I'd entered that place, I felt like maybe there was a way out. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I'd imagined. The next day, Gabriel appeared in the courtyard again. This time he was more confident, as if he knew I wouldn't reject him. "Your husband took me in when I was a penniless intern," he said. "He taught me everything I know. I promised myself that if I ever could, I would pay him back." As he spoke, memories of my husband flooded my mind. I remembered how generous he had a heart, always willing to help others. The thought that someone could have inherited that kindness from him brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in days, I felt human warmth. "But why did you come to me now?" I asked, still suspicious. Gabriel sighed and replied, "I found out about the documents your daughter presented. They're not really valid, but they want to speed up the process. If they succeed, you'll lose everything." His words were like a blade cutting through my soul. It wasn't just about money or possessions. It was about my voice, my dignity, my very existence. Amanda wanted to erase who I was, and Ricardo was helping her push me into oblivion. Deep down, something inside me screamed not to trust so easily. After all, hadn't Amanda herself taught me that blood could betray too? But Gabriel seemed different. His eyes never left mine, and there was a firmness in his voice I hadn't found in anyone else. A nurse named Teresa began listening in on our conversations. I feared she would report us, but to my surprise, one night she discreetly handed me a note. "Trust him. I also know you don't belong here." That was the push I needed. If even inside the clinic there was someone willing to risk their life to help me, maybe Gabriel really was my chance at freedom. I decided to tell him about some files my husband kept secret, documents that could prove my sanity and Amanda and Ricardo's bad faith. I wasn't sure if they still existed, but if they were in the right hands, they could change everything. Gabriel listened intently, jotting down every detail I remembered. "This could be decisive, Ms. Blanca," he said. "With this evidence, We can not only get you out of here, but also expose your daughter and her husband in court. That night, when I returned to my room, for the first time since the nightmare of hospitalization, I closed my eyes and managed to take a deep breath. The battle was far from over, but now I had an ally. And more importantly, I had a reason to fight. The following week, I felt the atmosphere at the clinic change. The staff's eyes were more attentive, as if they suspected something. I discovered that Amanda and Ricardo already knew I had sought help. Fear gripped me, but at the same time, a flame of courage grew within me. I could no longer back down. Gabriel managed to schedule a preliminary hearing to discuss my commitment. He explained that it would only be the beginning, but that it was a chance to show the judge that I was lucid. I spent nights mentally rehearsing what I would say, trying to find the right words to prove I was still my own person. Amanda showed up unexpectedly at the clinic 2 days before the hearing. She entered my room with firm steps and an icy gaze. "Mom, accept it. You're better off here. Don't complicate things." Her voice sounded like a threat disguised as care. I remained silent, but inside, a revolt burned. Ricardo beside her smiled cynically. "Don't worry, Blanca. This will all be resolved soon. You'll have peace, and we'll take care of everything." That phrase, "we'll take care of everything," made it clear what they really wanted: to erase me and take what was mine. On the morning of the hearing, I was driven away in a clinic car. My hands were shaking, but I kept my gaze steady. Gabriel stood beside me, encouraging me with soft words. "Show who you are. Don't let them convince the judge otherwise." I took a deep breath, trying to believe there was still a chance. Entering the room, I saw Amanda and Ricardo sitting there with confident expressions. They held a folder full of fake documents and doctored medical reports. For a moment, my heart skipped a beat. What if the judge believed them? What if my voice was muffled again? When the judge asked me to speak, silence fell over the room. I felt Amanda's eyes boring into me, waiting for me to shrink away. But as I opened my mouth, something inside me snapped. "Your Honor, I'm not incapable. I'm here because I was betrayed by my own daughter," the room murmured, and Amanda stood up in indignation. "She doesn't know what she's saying. She's confused. She needs treatment." But I didn't stop. Each word that left my mouth was like a blade, cutting through the invisible chains that held me captive. I looked directly at the judge and concluded, "They can try to silence me, they can lock me behind walls, but they can't erase who I am, and I'm ready to prove every lie." My voice echoed firmly, and in that instant, I saw Ricardo shudder. The judge asked for more time and additional documents, but I knew I had taken the first step. The battle was just beginning, and as I left the room, I felt the fragile woman who had entered the clinic finally begin to fade.